Hello, and welcome to the podcast, It's a Matter of Life and Death, a podcast by Annie Anderson and the Energy Medicine Clinic, one where we look to support, align, guide, and empower conversations that are tricky, passionate, and emotional about life and death. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon, and welcome to the studio, Misty.
Thanks for having me, Annie Anderson.
I'm very excited to have you here and to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, and buckle up.
This is your first podcast?
First time.
Okay, I'll be gentle with you.
Thank you. I do like it gentle.
What do you know about podcasts or this podcast? Like, what are you here for with your expectations?
Well, I'm trying not to have expectations, which is new for me.
Okay.
But I have recently applied to get a grant to do my own video podcast. And what better opportunity to learn more about the podcasting world besides listening to them is to actually partake in one.
Jump in.
I jumped in with you, and no better person probably to start with than you, because you have flow. I just listened to one of your first podcasts with your son, and it had just so much back and forth. You're a good question asker and can just follow along, and you never know where it's going to go, and that's probably the best part.
That is one of the things I love most about this, is that every podcast we do is unscripted. It's not edited for content. And there hasn't been anybody so far that has said, you know what, we need to stop. Like, this is too much. We got to shut this down. None of that. Because it's just very conversational.
Yeah, and that's the new talk show, is this, being able to do it in your office, in your bedroom, wherever you want, bringing a voice to the common person and all our exceptionalities that we have, and unique but universal experiences.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. Is one of my biggest focus with this podcast is to just open conversation, because there are so many people that are repressing what they truly feel or think or believe, because we live in a culture now that is cancel culture. You disagree with somebody, you get shut down, you get deplatformed, all those sorts of things. So then that makes it scary for people to talk.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think we're now past cancel culture, and maybe it's the cancel of cancel culture, because I think there's some lessons to be learned from removing things. That's like banning books and saying, you can't read that. Well, maybe just having an appropriate dialogue, conversation about what is appropriate for certain ages, people, whatever it might be, tearing down statues of people. And again, these are opinions that people can hold on polarizing issues. But I think I used to teach social studies for many years, and to have that idea of just completely removing, I think we lose lessons learned. Doesn't mean we have to idolize those things.
Or approve it or endorse it.
Correct.
But it is fact, it is history, or it is something that has happened. But the challenge is I don't think people know anymore how to have a conversation where they can disagree politely and they can have different opinions. So they just shut down.
Correct.
Yeah. And how is that healthy in any way? Like, repressing all of those conversations, it gets stored in your body. All those emotions, everything gets wound up, and that causes dis-ease, which is the underpinnings of disease.
Right.
Like, I explain to people, I speak in analogies. And so one of the big analogies I love is you have a car, you're driving, and you crash into the curb, and you get out and you check, okay, the tire didn't pop, we're good. I can keep driving. You don't realize, though, that behind the scenes, you've misaligned your wheels, and that wheel misalignment is going to cause a wear pattern change in your tire until it blows, and then you have an accident.
Right.
So that misalignment, that lack of ease in the way that tire operates, causes a problem in the vehicle. Boom. Like in your body. You have misalignments in your energy because of trauma or experiences or beliefs or whatever causes that shift or that blockage, it then manifests physically. And so much of this comes from not talking about, like it says on the intro, sensitive, charged conversations, whether it's about life or death or what's tricky or, that sort of thing. So to be able to open that dialogue, to me, is philosophically interesting for me, but healing. It's a healing opportunity for people.
Well, why do you think people find such strength and healing in therapy? And it's truly that processing information and having a connection with another entity.
Yeah.
And I think there's also power in writing. Like that
Yes.
conversation is a great thing. And to know I'm not alone and heard, and maybe get someone else's take on it,
Yep.
or any examples or analogies or anything that you can learn. And I've dived recently into writing, and it has changed my life, and in ways that I couldn't have probably guessed it would have earlier, in before pre 2024. I just survived,
Right?
and I didn't know the difference until I hit a brick wall and kept smashing my head up against that brick wall. And this isn't an analogy, not a literal moment, but it felt like it. It
Yep.
hurt. Nothing made sense. There was a lot of, in the end, burnout symptoms that overwhelmed me to the point of complete exhaustion, and I had to stop everything.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the aspects of
You name it.
energy was shot. Done.
I questioned, the only thing I had left to do was question why the heck I'm here. What's my purpose?
Yep.
And I have to have one.
Yep.
And when you reach that depth of questioning and really depression, there's nowhere to go but either concede to that, and I guess that means death,
Yep.
or the alternative to figure out what's wrong
And how to fix it.
and how to fix it.
Or change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the things that I learned earlier on was, what is in my power and locus of control? What can I actually toggle and adjust so that I feel better about feeling the control within me to make a change and make my life worth living, knowing I have a passion, purpose, and reason for existing on planet Earth right now.
Giving yourself some agency.
You bet.
Yeah.
So relinquishing my power drained me, and I was in such survival mode that I was just a drained battery all the time. And being a teacher, going year after year, and really a 7-week summer holiday, if you can call it that,
Yeah.
to try and restore your batteries, you're never getting up to 100%.
Yeah.
And so eventually I hit no percent.
Yep.
And needed to figure out, again, go back to everything, the basics, bare minimum, slept a lot, cried all the time. And again, diving into the writing world and conversing with professionals as well as friends, new and old, and all the community members around me that are in the healing professions, you for one of them. That's how I started to connect back with me, my body, my heart and soul, as well as what my mind is playing in this whole triad of being a human.
Yeah.
So me right now, trying to figure out what is humaning
Yep.
and what is healthy humaning.
Yes.
Because we haven't been doing it so healthily over the last, how many ever hundreds of years, let's just say. Industrial revolution really changed how humans live for the most part,
Yes.
especially most of us.
Yes.
And it really wasn't that long ago. A couple hundred years in the whole timeline of human history
Is not much.
is a blip.
Yeah.
And I think some people in previous lives and societies have figured it out. But I think we're at a relearning, a rebirth stage, and coming
Yes.
to that, well, why are we doing this? And how can we do it to better serve ourselves so that we can serve others?
What was the impetus, do you think, for this change to start? Like for things to make, for either to create awareness that change was necessary. What was the pinch point to even consider it, or conversely or appropriately action it?
Right.
Because I agree, things are changing. Systems are breaking down and being reborn. People are looking at things differently. They're questioning things. But why?
Well, there's never one solid answer for that. I'd say it's a few contributing factors. Technology is one, and the advancement in that, coupled with what happened with COVID, a complete shutdown, isolation, which I found actually quite healthy for me.
Yeah.
Because it was a quick e-break. Okay, less is more was the approach, and I loved that.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. And then it turned into, let's turn on the NOS and let's go full speed ahead. Because COVID's over and we're back to normal, but we're actually going to keep adding more and more. And so I'm a person who likes to do things and do it well. And when more and more kept getting added, or I wanted to keep progressing things, doing different, fun, unique, whatever, eventually there has to come a point. I usually use a math equation where you're going to run into the negative.
Right. You've only got so many energy dollars to spend.
Yes. And I ran out, and I felt really under-supported, and there was just something missing. And I just could feel it. And for years I was like, maybe I need to go teach somewhere else. Maybe I got to explore other options or
A different subject.
something.
Yep.
And I did play with different subjects and all sorts of things, but there was just something still not
aligning
for me.
Yeah.
And so when I got the opportunity to say for myself, I'm going to help me and I'm just going to back away.
Yeah.
One of the hardest decisions I've made in my life.
100%.
To leave something I loved.
Yes.
And people I cared for, to say, I just got to be done. And in the end, I hope there's some thankfulness, because this is what I need to be my best self. If I'm preaching that to my students and really trying to honor the truth that I believe that statement to be,
You got to walk the walk.
I got to do it. And
Or walk the talk.
walk it all.
Yeah.
Just, honor.
Be authentic.
Yeah. Honor your authentic self. And if
Yep.
I'm saying that, I want it to be true. Would I ever want to, leave anyone behind? No. But I have to know that they're going to see the lesson in this eventually.
And you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, I keep hearing that, and it makes sense. But I know on that plane, I probably would have put them on everyone else before myself. And I still think that part of me would. But there is a greater feeling of, I do matter, and I do have to take care of myself, because no one else will.
Or to the degree that you need or deserve.
Yes.
Like if I'm sitting beside you on the plane, I might be inclined to give you the mask, but you have to have a mask. And if I don't give you the mask, who is going to give you the mask?
Or if you take my mask, there's people who take.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and sometimes they don't realize the consequences of that, because it's not so literal.
Yeah.
It's not in their face.
It's funny. You reminded me of something somebody said to me a few years ago. Givers need to learn when to stop giving, because takers will never stop taking.
100%. Well, that burnout book we were talking about by the Nagasaki sisters.
I think so.
I think.
Yeah.
It talks about human giver syndrome a lot, and I resonated with that. I'm like, and especially being in a field of educators, that's kind of,
You're giving knowledge all day long.
yeah, and it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
The giving doesn't, because you're also doing all the other things behind the scenes, the coaching, the meetings, the trying to make sure you're appeasing the people. So, and unfortunately, you can never do that, right? It's a never-ending exhaustion train of trying to make everyone else happy at unfortunately sometimes your own sacrifice, which bleeds into your personal life.
Yes.
And you don't even realize how negative those consequences can be until you're out of it, unfortunately.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that. And then the expectation that you go back into the environment that made you sick to start with and expect that you're going to stay better.
Yeah, I also just listened to a podcast
sense.
or a book about that too, where he was totally talking about that if you go back into that environment that caused your burnout or helped lead to the symptoms of it, it's not helpful. It's not healthy.
No.
And you'll never become your thriving self.
It's almost abusive.
Oh, it is.
Because you've got this abused employee syndrome and you go back to the same relationship. Mm-hmm. There's been no change.
Right.
You've done all sorts of work on yourself, healing yourself. But if that relationship hasn't changed, it's going to be abusive again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't even think it's at one specific place. It becomes like a system-wide entity. And how do you change that?
Yeah.
When it's felt everywhere.
Yeah, on all the different levels.
All of them. So when my mom's like, "Oh, you're just like that, you're done, you're not a teacher anymore? Like why don't you just go to a different place?" And I'm like, I don't think that's the answer. Mm-hmm. That's not. And I was lucky enough to switch into teaching and running a entrepreneurial program, which was so fantastic for me, so freeing, fresh air.
Yep.
And I got to work. And I got to put people to work doing things that like lit them up. That wasn't regular school stuff.
Yeah. Out of the box.
Right. And that's where we thrive. And so through that experience of doing that for a year, it kind of gave me an insight into a world I didn't really know. I don't come from that kind of entrepreneurial work for myself background. So it's not something I was fully aware of and what it entailed to be your own boss versus being an employee of someone else's agenda or ideas. So
yeah, they're different ponds that you're swimming in. Mm-hmm. Where did you notice the burnout first? In what area? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, relationship wise? Where did that first twinge of, ow, something's not right? Where did that come from? Or where did you see it first?
I think it was anger, truly.
So emotional.
Yeah, and feeling just overwhelming tension, and it spilling into people that I cared about.
Yeah.
And
so you got feedback from people saying, what's going on here?
Yeah. And I just almost thought like, that's who I am. My last name has some connotations related to this word and idea. So I was like, well, maybe it's just a hereditary thing. Like, this is just who I am.
Right.
Like, I can't unlearn that. No. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of stages of grief that I've gone through. So to reconcile and even acknowledge those points, because there's so many different moments that added to the final burnout stage where I said I hit that wall and finally had to leave. Like that's your literal breaking point. But there's all sorts of things that lead up to that. Lots of no's. Told a lot of no's. And no's, every no kills my soul. Especially if there's no reason why.
Nothing logical to substantiate it.
Yeah, give me something. Give me a why, or maybe we could do this to make it a yes.
Yeah, how could we make it a yes?
Work with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just facing defeat after defeat, again, you have to reconsider and really think about and reflect on, is this what I want? Is this the me I want to be? Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? Mm-hmm. And in the end, after many a times of batting that ball around, I came to the conclusion that I needed to switch gears and completely let go of the past.
Yeah.
Even though my fingernails were clawed into it.
Yeah.
I knew I needed that change.
And how did you let go though? Like if you had to explain that to somebody, to say, you need to let go of this, and in essence, maybe even forgive that's the way it is, so that you don't have that attachment emotionally. How would you recommend, or what worked for you to be able to say, I've let go of that? Loaded question. I know, it's a big one.
I think a bigger thing with this, Annie, is you need time. Mm-hmm. And it's way more time than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Ever.
I totally agree.
I had 3 months. And I'm like, okay, we'll see how it goes. Those 3 months flew by.
Like that.
And I knew I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I was even questioning, am I ready to even mentally, emotionally handle a decision I'm making? Am I in that right headspace?
Yep.
So again, turning to writing, leaning into people, whether it's psychologists or life coaches, people who had no skin in the game.
No bias.
Yeah. And no real attachment to me or my outcome per se, but they turned into my cheerleaders, and they allowed me that safe space to just say it. Say whatever was going on, however I felt. And again, with that anger, there's a lot of negativity, swearing, and projecting too. And also, like, in that moment, you feel like a victim, but you're also part of the perpetuating the problem.
If you're part of the problem, you got to be part of the solution.
Right? Yeah. So it's a lot to deal with, and there's
a lot of honesty.
Yes. And as an educator, I've dived into yoga, and I taught yoga for many years. That idea of reflection is deeply ingrained in me, and to a point where I think overthinking has become the problem, right? Everything has that spectrum. Yep. And trying to find the balance,
the sweet spot,
and that tipping point of you've gone too far either way. Yep. I think the biggest human struggle in millions of different facets, it's how can we find that balance point for ourselves?
Yes.
And it might not work for you, but where's my, like, you know, when you have your TV setting and you can change your brightness out of 100 and all those. I like mine really quite dark. I don't like the backlight. So that might be somebody else's version of not worth watching TV. Yeah. So anyways, analogy aside, I think there's a lot encompassing what leads you to a breaking point and your ultimate decision to think about how you got there and how you're going to get out.
Was there any fear?
Yes, and I believe there still is, because it's where am I going now? I don't have necessarily I'm just going to go out and get this job, or I'm going to instantly be my own boss with the financial stability that I need. Right. That's not quite how it works. So it's a lot of baby steps. I love the movie What About Bob for that idea of baby steps. And I've used that as my mantra as I've gone through this to say, I just got to take it the day by day, week by week, month by month. And I have enough faith to this point in my life to say it's going to be worth it. And it's actually probably going to be better than I could ever imagine.
Yeah. Dial it down to manageable bites. And what you have actual control of. And is it based in reality, or is it based in a story you make up in your head?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So I think part of my grounding process had to be connecting with me, little me, teenage me, all the me's that ever got hurt, had expectations, learned a lesson, whether that was the appropriate lesson that made sense for the longevity of my life to learn. So life's that constant loop of learn, relearn, and change your behavior so that your life gets better.
Now, here's an out there question for you. Tell me if you've ever considered this. Have you ever considered talking to future me?
Yes. And part of the automatic writing experience, and thank you for the book you lent me.
Excellent book.
Excellent book. Definitely worth taking some time to read and maybe write about that if you really want to make it work. But that whole piece of your future self already exists.
Yeah. The quantum world.
Yeah. Wild to think about, but completely plausible. And so why not? And let the pen do the work. And so I have dived into, I've wrote to myself, I've wrote to my inner child, I've wrote to a lot of parts of me, because we are just those pieces.
Yes.
And my future self more or less says, keep being patient. And it will happen in time. Yes. But one of the things about me being a little bit of a over controller and perfectionist is that I want it done on my timeline. Next week would be great, you know? Yeah. But no, like that's the hardest lesson I've learned in life is how long it's truly going to take, and then triple that. Yeah. Yeah. So fun times. Just waiting. But you're not waiting. You're again doing the little things to care for yourself so that you can transition from a survival mode of feeling unsafe and uncared for and unconnected to the community to flipping that to feeling I'm connected to me and all parts of me, And that's cool. And I accept and love me. And then it can spill outwards into your relationships, into family, friends, community, clubs, activities, whatever you're doing. And people see the difference in you.
100%. What feedback have you gotten about how you're different?
Well, even before I hit this burnout wall, we'll call it, I ran into some new individuals who lots were educators, so they felt my plights. I ended up going to a professional development opportunity out in BC.
Yes.
To learn about Japanese Canadian internment during World War II mostly and post. And it was wonderful to see these people of all walks of life, and they would come up to me like they were drawn to me. And I was like, what's happening here? Again, I had become disconnected with myself. So I was just kind of like a walking zombie, just bobbing along, not feeling like I had a lot to give anymore. And one person even especially said, there was something about you. The moment I saw you, I wanted to meet you. I wanted to be in your presence, and I wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
I was like, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
I want to know, because I almost need you to tell me at this point, because I have blind spots and I can't see my own gifts, my own talents and abilities that I should hone in on more.
Yeah.
That's the unique parts of me.
Yeah. The powerful parts.
Yes.
And how many times, your life, my life, everyone's life, however you want to generalize this, are we told, don't toot your own horn?
Right.
Don't blab about what your gifts are. Don't go off. What is the word?
Well, braggadocious comes to mind.
Yeah. Don't be that, because that's not acceptable.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Well, I think some people
horn.
who didn't have anything, maybe they thought they could toot their own horn about. Or, that's just one of those.
Dim your light.
Yeah. Those unfortunate life lessons that we shouldn't have learned, but we picked up and kept perpetuating as we went along this journey. And that's what I feel that shift universally, I would hope, it's for sure in me to try and unlearn some of those innate things. Because I catch myself saying stuff. I'll be talking to people. I'm like, whoa. Ooh. Or even what I think automatically, my first reaction. And I'm like, well, that isn't healthy, or that's not me. Lately,
that's
it's
the
like
old version of you.
Yeah, like I'm like, well, that's not me, but I said it, so that's a part of me. Yeah. But that's not the me I like. So until you can acknowledge that and really reflect on what don't you like about it, what would you rather have said or thought or whatever,
that self-awareness.
Yes, that's where the real work begins, and that's how you evolve as an emotionally intelligent human, I suppose, to be more into that thriving, empathetic. Because one of the big things that humans need is that connection and care.
Yeah.
And knowing they're part of the group and won't be left behind.
Yeah. How did it feel asking those other teachers at that experience in Vancouver? Tell me what it is that you find sparkly about me. Was that hard?
For me to ask?
Yeah.
Well,
harder to receive.
Well, I realized in the last couple of years that I was a little bit lacking in the humble part of life.
Okay.
And so I was maybe at times a little too braggadocious. So I tried to tone that down, but I think maybe to a detriment.
Okay.
And so when those people came to me, it just lit up the spark even more. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Like I'm meant to do something, and I'm meant to be here right now to hear these messages. And
agreed.
It definitely wasn't too long after that my whole life changed. And I hit that wall, and I decided that I'm just going to start again and see where it goes and learn from this the best I can.
Have you ever heard of a gem or a crystal, a tektite actually is what it's called, moldavite?
I don't think so.
So moldavite, I have one on me. It's this green stone, and it comes from Molda, and it's from a meteor strike, I believe, that came, and it created this moldavite, this tektite. And the belief behind moldavite is when you wear it, it aligns and reconnects you with your soul's purpose. And don't wear it unless you're ready for the ride.
Right.
Like buckle up, like, yeah.
Yeah.
You lose relationships, you gain relationships. You might change your home, you might move, you might change your job. Like so many different things to shuffle you from being all over the place to laser-like.
Well, and that's the thing, Annie, feeling like you're in this chaotic, swirling storm off your axis, whatever you want to call it, versus feeling centered. And that's what the word grounding comes to mind. And feeling like you're anchored, tethered to something.
With purpose, direction.
And passion.
Yes.
Like we need joy and some versions of happiness that can keep us going to the next. Because there's always going to be a battle. There's always going to be heartbreak. Those are unavoidable, and that's part of this humaning experience, right? The ups and downs. But I needed to cultivate, I think, more of those moments of joy and simple. Getting out with nature, walking my dog. That's what I've loved the most about leaving formal work, was that I get to hang out with one of my best friends because they listen all the time and there's no judgment. Well, there is. Her eyebrows move all the time, I'm sure, just like Miss Ruby's. And they're just unconditionally want the best for you.
Yes.
And they bring this comfort.
Yes.
That you can't really find as much in human connection.
Yes. Unconditional support. And like cheerleader almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though they can't clap their hands for you, they would. Yep. And they're a special entity. And I liked when you talked with your son about them being containers, and they don't bounce it back to you. They almost absorb it into themselves and help.
I've wondered if that's why they don't live as long as people.
Interesting.
Because they take on and transmute, but don't necessarily let go of it.
Right. That's
maybe there's somebody out there listening to this that knows how to help ground animals consciously, to interact with an animal. I know a lady who does Reiki for pets. So maybe I'll check with her. But to be able to ground that, to let go of that, because I think you're right, they do absorb it. But maybe that's why dogs only live 10, 15 years on average.
Yeah, but maybe that's why they also need walks. Maybe that's their grounding technique, and that's
how they get it out.
That's how they release it.
Yeah.
And I know that's my dog's favorite thing to do.
Yep.
So
I tell her that she's going to go and fill her sniffer.
Yes, I love that.
So now that you've had some of the time away and you're, in essence, start creating a new career or a new... I don't want to say career because a lot of people lead when they're meeting somebody. And I realize I've known you for years, but they say, what do you do? As in, where's your value in this world based on your job?
Yep.
And I say embarking on this new career, that kind of speaks to that same sort of mindset. But this new version of you, is it version 2.0 or do you think it's version 3, or where are you at with your versions?
It's probably at least a 3.0. It seems to roll with the decades, I've noticed.
Okay.
I just turned 40, and 30 was a big changeover for me too. And that's when I met yoga, and it changed my life, and it allowed me for the first time to turn inward and listen to my own soul speak to me and say, you need to live more in line with who you actually are and comfortable being. And so this time, again, a decade later, it's where you were heading was stifling.
Yes.
And that wasn't the life we picked for you. And I leaned into it. I did almost anything you could think of, Annie.
Except for Moldavite.
Except for that. I've played with some other ideas and gems and rocks and stuff. But it's definitely the ideas of how do you truly align what you're doing with what you are meant to do.
Yeah.
And feel that spark of purpose, and we'll keep coming back to
and
all
joy
the P
that
words.
comes from meeting that purpose.
Yeah, because your purpose is usually outside of yourself, AKA you, by doing what you love and get positive energy back from others, you're feeding the positive energy feedback loop.
Yep.
I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
More a part of it. I did great things. Like the 15-year teaching career I had was a wild ride, and I wouldn't change that. But to move forward with what I've learned, my life coach says, you don't throw everything away.
Yeah.
Take all those good things that you loved.
Bring them with you.
So there's this curriculum course called CALM, which is Career and Life Management. And we teach it to, 16, 17-year-olds. And they don't grasp it. It covers everything about your inner knowledge of yourself. Like we talk about love languages and like, who are you? Yeah.
And see, I did CALM class like how many years ago now? 33 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember a single thing in there.
No, you wouldn't.
And my son actually has to do it to graduate. He still needs to take that course.
Yep.
It'd be interesting to look over his shoulder and see what's in the curriculum.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the curriculum's good enough, but again, like we're trying to shove it down the throat of a teenager
who's not receiving,
who doesn't even want to be in the building, let alone in the class.
Yeah.
To get sensitive in a group of strangers, really. They don't even know half the other people names. Yeah. And so it's a weird environment to say, this is where you're going to learn about you and about your trajectory in life and what skills and attributes and interests will align for the career for you.
Yeah.
And even on that podcast you talked with your son about, like, you're going to have more than one career in your life. And so my goal moving forward is to not have a one-trick pony career and not be one thing.
Yeah.
Not that I was one thing, but it was kind of sum total of your teacher. I want to be a little bit of everything in different modalities too. Being an author, hosting my own podcast, being able to share my voice and what I've learned through trial and tribulation.
You want to be the general contractor, not just the plumber or not just the electrician.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I want to hold the control to decide for myself and know if it's right for me, then let's go. If it doesn't sit right with me, then it's a no, at least for now. We'll come back to it later if we need to. But I think the biggest thing is aligning more with what truly feels right in my body, heart, and soul. And if you do sit, listen, write, whatever, converse enough, you'll hear it. You'll feel it. You know.
The question is, though, if you know, will you acknowledge it, own it, and act on it?
Correct.
Because there might be a price that you pay for being authentic and acting on what you know.
Annie, there are pros and cons to every decision and indecision in life, no matter what.
Yes.
You're going to have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And you're not going to even be able to weigh out all those pros and cons. You're not going to know.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of, that's the going with your gut. What is
the
that?
best decision you could make it given what you knew at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so what is that inner compass of you guiding you towards? And does it align with your head? And does that, can you go to sleep at night feeling good about?
Can you look at yourself in the mirror?
Yeah. That's even more important maybe than sleep sometimes, is actually being able to look at ourselves with pride, I suppose, to a certain extent.
Integrity.
And say, no, I'm doing what's right for me now. And with minimal negative consequences, hopefully on other people. That would be the ideal goal, I think.
Yeah. So what would be some of the next steps for you to go from surviving to thriving? Like, I know you're working on this podcast creation, and that's awesome to get that going. And you're going to be working on maybe writing a book.
I wish it would write itself. You know how it be. I'm sure you would love to write a few books.
I've got 8 or 10 started already.
Oh my gosh. Always started. It'd be nice to finish some of those. Or maybe just mini little books. They're 8-pagers. We can publish those. You know, like, I think that is also part of my discovery is the ability to be creative and think totally out of the norm. Just
out of the box.
Just think. What comes to mind?
You know, it's interesting. One of the techniques that I learned when I took my hypnosis class was the value of offering people 3 choices. The like basic meat and potatoes choice, the desired choice, and the outrageous, like likely never going to happen, but you know what? Let's not limit the possibilities choice, because then it allows your brain to go from meat and potatoes to outrageous, and it might be even more than what you hoped and dreamed for because you didn't limit yourself.
Right. And that's the thing, limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And we do put those on ourselves so much.
Yep.
As well as that coupled with learned helplessness.
Yes. Tell me more what you think about that. That's a fascinating topic.
Part of this healing, recovery, rediscovery journey has involved me turning over most medical stones to make sure that, everything's good.
Yep. There's nothing to worry about that's sneaking up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to check those boxes and make sure. So I made sure to see a psychiatrist. And that's the one message that I got from him.
Which was?
Which was part of your problem, just like many other people, is learned helplessness. You think that you can't help yourself. I'm like, yeah, that rings a bell, because me going on this journey was because I wasn't helping myself along the way. And sometimes I was my worst enemy, and I'm not trying to blame others for what happened. It was a perfect storm of events and people and all the things, but there is something about that mental blockage you put in your mind, and you don't put it there, but it gets there. Okay. And then we just live within those. He was talking about an experiment with dogs or something, and like they get this electric shock inside this cage, and even when eventually the door was open, they kind of just still laid there. Again, like it's
almost
pointless.
like Pavlov's dog, almost.
Maybe.
Like you think, based on a stimulus, there's always going to be the same response.
Right.
Okay.
And so you eventually, those neural pathways entrench themselves or wither.
Yep.
And you have to decide, am I going to keep feeding that loop? Like, am I going to keep with that path? Again, but firstly, you have to acknowledge that you're on that path.
Yes.
And that it's maybe not working in order for you to even consider how to change it.
Yep.
So there's definitely that part of my journey made me realize, that's a big thing. And it made me feel even more empowered. And again, trying to remove myself from a victimhood status, because I'm not going to get into my power and feel my most confident self when I feel like I let myself down. I'm the reason I'm hurting. Truly.
So what can I do to help me?
So what now can I do to help me?
What is the term? Like, maybe you know the term. I don't know. I don't know what the term is. What is the term for the opposite of learned helplessness? Is that empowerment? Is that resilience?
I would say maybe, yeah.
Or is there another term? Have you heard of one?
I like both of those. And there is something empowering about knowing, no, I don't have to do it that way. No, I actually don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Or I get to choose.
Well, isn't that the definition of insanity?
Yes.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
Remember that brick wall I was hitting my head up against? That was my definition of insanity.
I heard it's along the same vein something, and I loved it so much I put it on my business cards. In order for something to change, something has to change.
You betcha. And it doesn't take a lot, but like if you change one thing,
1%,
and over the course of time, your habits will eventually entrench into new, hopefully positive behaviors, with that ripple effect being better for you, your health and emotional well-being, as well as those around you. I don't know who loves to be a jerk or feel crappy. I don't think they truly like that state. It just might be what they know.
It's what's familiar.
Right? And we are those kind of people a lot of the time who change is the scary thing.
Creature of habit.
But what's the saying about change? That's the only constant in life you're ever going to get is change. So buckle up and put on your big person pants, because humaning, people used to talk a lot, and they still do, about adulting. And I'd say it's humaning. Like, let's not say it starts when you turn 18. No, I think the humaning is hard all along the way.
Sure.
So let's not put an age on it.
So what do you say though to those people that have been so broken and so damaged and so hurt and so squashed that change is just exhausting?
Well, so is living in the life you've already been living in.
Pick your hard.
Yeah, choose your hard. 100%. One of the favorite things I've leaned into is a podcast called We Can Do Hard Things.
I'm not familiar with that.
And it's a brilliant show that showcases the plights and the awesome parts of being human. And it just, I started back at episode 1, and I think they're in episode 200 and some, and it took me the last 8 months to get through the learnings that go along with the podcast. But truly, that idea of we can do hard things, and we are going to have to do hard things. So do really choose which one. And are you going to be empowered by it, or are you going to say, oh, that just happened to me, and feel like a little bit like, again, more into that demoralizing victim mentality.
Yeah. Pick your hard.
So I'm picking my hard, and my hard can be summed up as leaving all that I knew behind.
And starting fresh.
And taking a chance on me. I know I have a lot of gifts and people connections. Like there's something, kids in the grocery store staring at me, rubbernecking as I walk by them. And I'm like, what's that about? But I know now, like they can see my aura. They can see
your energy
through me. Yeah. They can see that I am just something more of a positive vibe that they want to know more about.
That je ne sais quoi.
Yes. What the French say.
Yes.
So I want to lean into kind of the unknown and kind of continue to do what I've done, which is take chances, but calculated in a way enough to know
Purposeful.
that I have what it takes to do X, Y, Z all at the same time.
Yep.
I feel like my energies have been slowly restored. And every week's kind of different. That's an up and down, and the weather definitely can play a role in that.
Sure.
But coming to terms more with it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like I didn't quit my job. I pivoted for
new opportunity.
New opportunities that I wouldn't have ever had had I stayed and been in that
Great
container.
Perspective.
Right? And there's lots of opportunities that can come knocking, or I can go knock and find. But when you're already committed to something that is such a commitment, energy, time, all the things are pooled into that, it's really hard to also go out and do those things in addition to that. So now that I've freed up a little bit more of my time and energy and rebuilt, I think my battery's getting up, 80, 90%. I can feel much better about that and not exhausted all the time. But I also want to learn these lessons. So
you don't have to do it again.
Well, I don't want to have to build up all these things and be like, that's too much, I'm burnt out. And then have to stop it all and restart again.
Yeah.
So I've tried to think about it, even recently, as you like analogies, about like we have a stove burner and maybe the oven, sure. But you can only cook and manage so much on that stove at one time.
Yep.
Or it is going to burn.
Yep.
So 5 things, that's plenty. That's a lot on a stove. Because then you're using the warming pad too.
Yep.
And that is chaotic and super messy. And how can you make it good when you're so drawn over so many tasks, So I wanted a little bit of a less is more approach, but just things that I choose to fill my energy cup. Intentionally, for sure. And I get to decide. And that's, again, part of me stepping into that power and knowing I do get to decide. And I also have to live with the consequences of those decisions.
But you also get to reap the rewards.
Yes. And that's the positive side for sure, is that you get to live in.
You're the architect of your own future.
Yeah, weird to think that's you at such a younger age of your life, but somebody else is pulling all the strings, and you're more let's quiet and watch, which I am. I'm a sponge. I love watching people and learning from them, but I also like engaging with them and teaching them. And again,
But you've got stuff to offer.
I think so, Annie.
Yes, I know so.
Yeah. What's
Like
my
when,
list?
like when you say, you know, the kids in the grocery store walk by, or you walk by them and they see you and they kind of follow you with their eyes, and maybe they're seeing your aura, your energy, whatnot. I see that in people's eyes. There's either that spark or there's that look of a dairy animal. That like flat.
Right. Yeah.
And not to say that people out there, like they're all dairy animals, but it's just like, are you living and connected, or are you just existing?
Right. The surviving versus thriving.
And you've always had the spark. And it dimmed. I will say that it dimmed.
Yeah.
And now it's like roaring again.
Roaring sounds nice.
Yeah.
I
Like a fire, like a flame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it bubbling inside me. And again, the more time and space and work you put towards healing from your past, the better it's going to be. So put in those, one of my favorite sayings, I have no idea where I picked it up, but short-term sacrifices for long-term gains.
Yes.
And I need to keep that in mind, that sometimes it might hurt now or not feel good, or changing a habit is really, really hard. But you know what? Stretching is important. Eating well-balanced and maybe portion controlling also matters. And those all add up in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah. What can I choose in this moment that will get me where I want to go? Does this choice support my end goal?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the struggle is real,
excited.
Annie Anderson.
I am so excited to see where this goes for you.
Thank you. There's Glennon Doyle who does that We Can Do Hard Things podcast. She has a little word sandwich. Like the new dictionary is just word sandwich because we've run out of words. So we just married them all together. And hers is with her family, skited. Like, are you scared but excited? You know, not just scared and fearful, like, no, I don't want to do it. It's like, no, like I'm nervous, but I am hopeful and interested to see where it's going. And that'll fuel me long enough to hopefully get to the moment where it's like, oh, it's actually excitement and joy. And like, yes, the hard times were worth it to get to this here. And the feeling in me that I feel somewhat accomplished and that I'm able to help others in some capacity. I don't know why, but that seems to be the calling I have been bestowed, and that can look a million different ways.
Well, it's funny. I had this image in my head just get me when you're talking about that, and I saw this frog jumping from lily pad to lily pad.
100%.
And it's like, as they take off from the one, am I going to get to the next one, or am I going to splash into the water? And that scared excitement, trust, just take the leap, do the things, believe. And maybe even scream a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I once rode a roller coaster. It was not the most enjoyable experience because they put the last car on backwards.
Okay.
So think about the G-forces of riding a roller coaster, and your head is down because all the G-force. So you're not pushed back like, you're literally down in your own lap trying to look up. And I was like, I think that's a pretty good analogy for my life is that roller coaster ride I went on. And it's wild. It's unconventional. But it's mine, and I get to do it my way now, I guess. And I probably always have done it my way, but there was obviously some sort of push early in my life to just pick a career and go do it.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few in my extended family to ever go to pursue post-secondary and get a degree and then go into this career we call teaching. And I will always be a teacher. I will always be a learner. And I don't think that stops until you die.
Yeah.
But what you do with that,
yes, how you channel that.
Yeah, that's up to you. And we do have choice. We have that agency, and that's the best part about being a human.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Annie Anderson.
And I am sure we will speak soon. And I look forward. Do you know what your podcast name is going to be? Can we give it a pre-plug, or do you not know yet?
Well, there will be one podcast. I'll probably do a couple different versions, but there's going to be a local one that you're going to be on around helping around the hat is the working title of it. And that's people that I know in the community that are doing super different things.
Great idea.
So it's not necessarily just volunteering stuff. It's like what you do to work with people's energy. Yeah, the tools. And those people that are willing to share that for, again, not their gains per se, but for the betterment of people around them. And so that's going to launch early 2025 some point. But I'm hopeful to probably do my own, and I have no idea. I think I want to spin off my name in some way, like Mystified or Mystification. Ooh. Or anything with Misty in it has really drawn me in because there's not very many of us, and maybe not very many of us who are doing certain things in that creative outlet. So I'm definitely going to play with that idea a little bit more and see what sticks, but stay tuned, and there will be things coming from me that you can learn more. And I'm excited and skited.
You're skited.
I'm skited. I'm so skited right now. I'm looking forward to the new me. The snake has fully shed its skin now, and I'm ready to kind of grow a little bigger and feel like I fit in this body, in this world, in my community, and just embrace that with the highs and lows. And again, lean into the people who are there as supporters near and far, and who have that positive energy wheel going and are willing to just allow you to be in their presence and share that, and hopefully spark some more things in me, because yes, there is some things burning, but I would love some more energy to fuel my fire too.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll talk soon again, I'm sure, and keep on keeping on.
You betcha. Thank you.